Welcome to Addis Ababa for the 14th edition of the Great Ethiopian Run. Inspired by the imperious Haile Selassie, this event has grown over the years into a massive celebration of African distance running, and this year a total of 40,000 people are on the start line, including an elite field that boasts the very best local talent. The course has changed somewhat over the past few years to accommodate major infrastructural changes around Addis Ababa, but the mass start remains one of the most colourful sights in global athletics. Commentary comes from Tim Hutchings.
Male elite field at the start line then for this 14th edition. Glorious weather. It's 8:57 in the morning, the start time for these men. The women will go off 1 minute behind them. Then the masses at 9 a.m. Away they go, this big elite field. It's around 300, 350 strong. What they do know is that these first 5 or 6 kilometres of the 10 kilometres are very, very fast. Majority of it downhill. Of course, there is a huge spectrum, a very broad spectrum of abilities and experience in this race. Very often in this sort of event, the athletes with little experience surge off from the gun and then fail to maintain that tempo even before halfway. The more experienced athletes will be back in that huge pack spread across the road, some 15 wide, and biding their time. At 56 it is, Telila Abate at the front in the blue and white, looking strong and confident at the moment. That's not hard to do. Well, the masses, of course, back in further back down the street, getting ready. 3 separate starts for the 40,000 thereabouts in the mass field. This race has grown and grown over the years. The biggest field prior to this year was in 2012 when there were 35,000. The ladies, their time to get underway. About 150 strong, this elite ladies field. Some very, very good athletes in there, including one athlete going for a retention or a regaining of her title. Wude Ayalu, the most experienced in the field, up against many, many unknown athletes here, hoping to make their mark. She was 22nd in this race back in 2005, Ayalu, coming back from 2 or 3 years away from the sport, but 4:35 there in this ladies' race. Abarash Faisa has had 1 or 2 races in Europe. That is the big target for all these athletes, women and the men here. As we see this men's group with 3.5 minutes on the clock. They've gone through the first kilometre at a healthy clip, 2:47. Very, very fast indeed with that predominantly downhill gradient. This is the road heading down the eastern side of the course, generally southeastern direction, with a lot of embassies alongside them to the runners left there. And the leading ladies group, well, it's big, isn't it? Around 20 strong. Not as big as that men's group, which is some 50 strong. But 4:35 leading at the moment. Abarash Faisa has raced in France last year. So many of these athletes hoping they'll get picked up by a European agent and taken over to Europe for a chance to get in the big races and earn some money. In a country where the average monthly salary is just a few dollars, this race represents a massive opportunity. 4:32 surging to the front there. Netzanet Gudeta, very experienced. Last year's winner by 21 seconds, Gudeta. Taking control, it seems, early on. Only 4 minutes on the clock for the ladies. But no wind at all. It's around 14 and 15 degrees just after 9 o'clock. The only disadvantage, of course, is the fact they're racing at about 7,500 feet. That altitude applies to the masses as well, of course, where they get underway in a somewhat disorderly manner, but with smiles all round. The energy is almost palpable. 39,000 to be exact in the mass fields. They have 3 different starts. They come together after about 600 meters. But many of them, of course, are just there to soak up the atmosphere and get round, whether it's jogging or walking, it doesn't matter. Be part of it. This astonishing river of humanity that was initiated by Haile Selassie, the emperor of running, back in 2001. Many of this men's field, of course, inspired by Haile Selassie. 2-1-0 there in this lineup. Asmaro Bekele, looking strong and confident. He won here back in 2010. And the surges are going in again and again. Tekele there in the orange is leading. runs for the Aromia Police team. Many of these elite athletes, as they go through around 3 kilometers now with just 8 minutes 25 on the clock. This downhill course means they will go very, very quick through to halfway and just beyond before they hit the hills. 3 big hills to be negotiated in the last 4 kilometers. But Negawa, you get Gudeta, Takele are all there, and it's unrelenting. Different names appearing at the front as they surge again and again. And this is the nature, of course, of East African running. They run fearlessly. They don't really think about tactics or strategy. They just get to the front and push it along hard. And look how quickly these ladies are moving, this big pack. What, about 30 strong? Pick a point on the pavement as they go past and see how quickly they zip past that stage. 4:32 is Gudeta, 6th in the World Half Marathon Championships earlier on this year in Denmark, in Copenhagen. That was back in March. She has real pedigree in the blue there to left of picture. 4:52 beside her, Tila Hun has already run 3 marathons this year in the yellow, who leads now. I wonder if that fatigue will come out later in the race. You can go to the well too often. 4:24 there. Ayele, just 19 years old, has never competed outside Ethiopia. A good run here. Could see her garner invitations to Europe and beyond. They are still on this very, very gradual downhill section, which enables the athletes to stride out but still be in control of their body movement. The men now with Richard Narurka, they're one of the founders of the race in the yellow on the bike. A 2:08 marathon runner himself, leading them round this right-hand corner at the southeastern tip of the course, the Diaspora roundabout. And they negotiate a slight uphill now, approaching 4 kilometers. Absolutely no let up in this pace at all. 2:42 there has hit the front, Teshome. And it seems that in each race, the lead changes hands minute by minute. 4:35, that's Abarash Faisa loping along there on this slight uphill section now. 10 minutes on the clock for the ladies. The overall profile for the first 6 kilometers is downhill. There are a few undulations, of course. 4:52, Tila Hun, 11th in Dubai back in January, and then she ran the Prague Marathon and then won the Venice Marathon in October, just a month ago. But they've got progressively slower, those 3 marathons. And the same applies to these men. Any of them who have raced regularly, and particularly at the longer distances in recent months, might yet be feeling it. This is a punishing course with the really hard hills coming at them in the latter stages. 1:39. Well, Mengistu runs for the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia club. Started running 6 years ago in the Amhara region, which is producing more and more great runners now. Most of the big names like Gebre Selassie and Kenenisa Bekele and Darautu Tulu come from the Arsi region, but Amhara becoming another major force. 1:85 there in that orange strip. Saife Ture runs for the Muga Cement team, rather like the Japanese top athletes, many of them sponsored by commercial organizations. These Ethiopian athletes just enables them to improve their diet and their training options. 2:10. That's Bekele, former winner, very accomplished racer in the blue there to the right of picture. He's run a couple of half marathons this year, 4th in Paris and 2nd in a race in the Czech Republic. When he won 4 years ago, he won by just 1 second, did Bekele, but at the moment, impossible to call. And it's beginning to stretch out a little bit on the women's side. 12 minutes on the clock for them. They take this right-hand turn and head towards the 4-kilometer marker, so still a long way shy of 5K. 4:17. Well, this is Ashte Bekele, 26-year-old. She too has run 3 marathons this year, the most recent of them in October. That was when she was 3rd in Frankfurt in a personal best of 2:24. She's very strong, but marathons are unforgiving. You take weeks to recover from a marathon, and I wonder whether Bekele, their 4:17, will be able to stay out in front like this. 4:24 going with her, that's Ayele, the youngster. This is her first big race. Well, she did run in the domestic Coca-Cola race series just a couple of months ago, which she completed and ended up winning. Well, further back down the course, the field bathed in this glorious early morning sunshine, blue sky in the altitude of the Ethiopian capital. looking at these pictures, it's very easy to forget that they're running through that thinner air, which makes distance running, indeed any endurance discipline, very, very trying indeed. 1:29 nearest the camera in the men's race is Bonsadida, 14th in the World Half Marathon Championships back in March. Very strong for a 19-year-old. He's run 2:12 for a marathon. That was in May this year. The pace is steady, just past halfway. Very soon they'll hit those hills, will this men's field. And that's when it'll sort out the men from the boys. It really will, almost quite literally. Downhill section this, as you can see from that shot. Very, very quick running. But those who have done their homework on this course will be gathering themselves psychologically for those climbs. There we go, through 6 kilometers. The split there, well, that's 6 kilometers, about 17:23. Bekele then, glancing across at the camera, 3:94 coming to the frame now. Wude Ayalu, still only 27 years old, Ayalu there in the orange vest. Small, compact athlete, but tremendously experienced, probably more than anybody else in this field. Gudeta and Ayele are there as well. She was a World Championship bronze medalist at 10,000 meters back in Berlin in 2009, Ayalu. She does have some unfinished business at the marathon. She made a debut in Dubai earlier on this year, ran a very poor 2:57, poor by her standards. But she looks back in shape now. She's going with this aggressive running from Bekele out in front. Indeed, they're beginning to pick up some of the back markers from the men's elite field. I almost said mass field because it was a huge group. There were athletes coming to this race now from all over the world, including other parts of Africa and Europe. But the ladies approaching halfway. Well, the men continue to surge then. Just after 6 kilometers, they crossed the Adwa Bridge in this 14th edition of the Great Ethiopian Run. They went through 5 kilometers in 14:13, and this lead group has certainly whittled down from, what, about 50 strong to around 20, 25 runners, as the pace is pushed along by a variety of leaders. 2:02 there in this men's field, glancing around, Fedaku Seboka. Relatively inexperienced, ran a 62-minute half marathon back in May, so he's got plenty of strength. Number 1 there is Berhanu Legesse, the 20-year-old in the blue. Won the Coca-Cola Series in the city back in 2012. The only time he's represented Ethiopia was at the African Championships this year over 5,000 meters when he finished in 8th place. 1:39. Right there on the shoulder of the leader is Mengistu. While the masses enjoying themselves, good crowd support as they make that sharp right-hand turn at the Diaspora roundabout just after 3 kilometers. And the ladies now with 18 minutes on the clock in single file, and it has whittled down pretty markedly. 4:32, doing the aggressive running, putting in the hard yards to try and break those behind her. Distance running is all about patience. You have to have the confidence that you're hurting those behind you, no matter how long they stay on your heels. But Gudeta, it is Netzanet Gudeta, who's never raced on the track. She's an out-and-out road runner. Started running 4 years ago in Bakoji. On the Addis 10 kilometers earlier on, just a couple of weeks ago in 33:24. They're on a downhill section now. Still quick running for these ladies, but they are past halfway. And indeed, it is Wude Ayalu in the orange there, who appears to be almost hanging on to this surge from Gudeta, and it is taking its toll. Look, the gaps are beginning to widen back there behind. Bekele having to let go. And now Ayalu easing onto the shoulder of Gudeta in the blue, the taller figure. 2:10. Asmaro Bekele. No man has ever won this race twice in the 13 previous editions. He won here in 2010. Can he regain the title this year? He's certainly looking strong and relaxed there in that blue kit to ride a picture. 2:80. That's Morange, Frederick Morange. Hasn't really shown himself to the front at all. 1:29. That, remember, is Bonsadida, who is very experienced. that 2:12 marathon in his legs from last May. And actually was 4th in the World Junior Cross Country back in 2011. He's been around and about on the roads and the country for some years. 1:39 to the extreme right of picture, that's Mengistu. He too very experienced with big races aplenty beyond Ethiopia's borders. But one sort of senses with 21 minutes on the clock that they have slowed a little bit now, as though they're gathering themselves, because that pack is what, 6 or 8 strong. Nobody's really pushing it hard to try and break it up just yet. They don't want to sacrifice themselves before they hit the big hills. Well, those athletes coming back into the frame in the ladies' race. 4:24. Ayele, the youngster. At the moment, Ayalu in the orange there is just tucked in behind this pair. They've got male athletes with them who are seemingly wanting to stay with them, perhaps using these ladies as a gauge for their own tempo, maybe just not wanting to get beaten by any of these ladies. But you can see there, Ayele in the blue, working hard to try and break the other 2 ladies behind her. Beside her, the gentleman in blue nearest the camera glances across and says something there. She flaps her hand at him as if to say, no, go away, I don't need your company, thank you very much. She wants to do this on her own. She's focused, she's got to be hurting now. She's at about 2/3 distance, 22.5 minutes on the clock. She's got these regular targets to aim at, the back markers of the men's elite field. Yes. But right up at the other end of the men's elite field, this is the race for glory. To the unknown athletes who come out of the country, who have put in the months of hard running, this race represents a massive opportunity. Some of the established names in Ethiopian athletics still run this race each year simply because of its status now, the prestige associated with running well in this one. They take a sharp left-hand turn there after the last downhill section. They're at about 8.5 kilometers. They know they've got about 5 or 6 minutes of hard running to go. And we're down to 3. You can hear the roars of the masses on the other side of the road, because to their right, out of picture, behind this camera in effect, are the masses heading out at the beginning of their race, some of the other 39,000 runners. Well, 4:32, still doing the aggressive running. She's earned this. Wherever she comes, you hope she has a good run. She's had 3 good half marathons this year, has good data. And last year's winner knows the course, knows when to push, when to ease back, but she's put in so many of the hard leading jobs, kilometre after kilometre. Ayalu it is in the red, who again just tucks in behind her. Ayalu, by the way, the 11th fastest athlete in history at 10,000 metres. She's got a great track pedigree as this men's field begins to thin out. Head down there, grimacing and pushing hard, is Bonsadida in the white vest, trying desperately to break the man behind him there, Bekele in the blue. Both of them now grimacing and leaning into this uphill section. 7,500 feet up. Indeed, the finish, by the way, is about 400 feet above the start line, so as if altitude wasn't enough to accommodate, they actually have a net gain of about 400 feet on this course. But we're down to 2 in the ladies' race, and Gudeta continues to push hard. She just cannot rid herself of Ayalu. She's a very, very tough and very experienced racer, Ayalu. She has fabulous personal bests. 8:30 for 3,000 metres, 30 minutes 11 for 10,000 metres. By the way, I said she's 11th fastest in history at 10,000. Globally, she's only the 7th fastest Ethiopian in history. That is the quality of Ethiopian distance running at depth. But these are away now. They make one of the final turns there and head into the last 1.5 kilometres as Bekele hits the front and gets a little bit of daylight, or does he? Being pursued now by Mengistu, approaching Jan Meda, the big racecourse venue where the race finishes up above the city. Grassed area, they will run about the last 600 yards on grass. But Bekele cannot get that gap, cannot establish that gap. He is a 59-minute half marathon runner, he has enormous strength, and as I say that, so there's a surge from Mengistu. He's determined to lead through the gates and into Jan Meda, the finishing park. They're getting a little bit of instruction from the bikes and vehicles accompanying these athletes. Well, we're down to 2 in the men's race, and we're down to 2 in the women's race, and now a surge from Wude Ayalu. using all that racing now garnered over many, many years on cross-country races. She's been 5th twice in the World Cross-Country Championships and on the roads as well and on the track. She's the complete racer, this lady. She spent a little bit of time away from the sport, but coming back now with what looks like fabulous fitness. And I wonder if this is the prelude to an attack on a decent world-class marathon run from the 27-year-old. So our personal best is 31:07. That was in the USA 4 years ago. It was a national record then. We're not going to see quick times here today from the ladies or the men. And the men now onto the final section, onto the grass up at Jan Maeda. Not a perfect surface, a little bit sandy, a little bit rough in places. But this is the sprint on in effect. And they are so tired, these men. There is no real pumping of the arms and lifting of the knees. And indeed, Asmaro Bekele hits the front, and there's very little resistance indeed coming through from the second placer there, Mengistu. He can't go with this one final surge. And he eases away now to victory, and what a victory it is. Asmaro Bekele comes to the tape. Forget the time, it was never going to be fast on this difficult course, but that's a fabulous win by him. Just some 10 metres or so ahead of Mengistu. Great running from the pair of them. What a race it is too. 3rd place there, Takele in the orange. Adugna Takele takes 3rd place for the Oromia police team. And the first 3 make the rostrum. In 4th place, Fekadu Garama from the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia squad. And the places behind them pretty close together. Different situation in the ladies' race. Ayalu is away, and the gap behind her now, what, 15 metres, maybe 20 metres. And she's still got the odd tail-ender male elite run its way, Matt. And that's really good. It's like having somebody to chase in a relay race on the track. It's so much easier to run smoothly when you've got a target. But the last section on the road now for Wude Ayalu. She's been world-class since 2006, 8 years now. And the topper echelons of world distance running for this young lady. Remember, 22nd 9 years ago in this race. Perseverance has led her to come back and get it right this time. 9 years later, the crowds further back down the course. Many of them walking, jogging and walking, a mix perhaps. Look at that glorious shot of the zigzagging route around the Ethiopian capital. Smiles everywhere though. They get the t-shirt, they get the experience. They've raced against, on the same day at least, as world medalists, champions. And Ayalu comes to the line. It's been a dominant run from her when it really mattered most over the last half mile or so. She broke loose, eased away from the second place. The Netzanet Gudeta crosses the line. She deserved so much, and she made the rostrum at least. Gudeta, what, just some 6 seconds down. In 3rd place, Gebeyenash Ayele in the white takes 3rd. And not far behind her too. Good run from Alamitu Haroye from that Bank of Ethiopia squad. Well, let's take a look at those results now. As you can see, Asmaro Bekele winning in 30 minutes 11 seconds from Asmaro Mengistu, no relation. 30-13 for him, and then 4 seconds down Takele in 3rd place. Very good running on this difficult course. And the women's side, as we saw, Wude Ayalu, her class allowing her to rise to the top eventually. 34.03 there, taking the title from Netzanet Gudeta, who did so much of the donkey work in the race. 34.09 with Ayele in 3rd, 34.17.
It was a difficult race today, especially the last kilometre. I'm usually good on steep hills, so I had the confidence that I could win.
I have won this race twice before, so I set myself the goal of winning it 3 times. I've been preparing very hard to try to win the race today.
I'm really happy to win again, especially since my last victory in the Great Ethiopian Run, I've had some injuries. To come back from that and win the race again is something that makes me very happy.
For me, for my career in international athletics, the Great Ethiopian Run is the first stage. It's very important for me to win this race. I love this race. It's like an Olympics for me.
The Great Ethiopian Run once again providing the spectacle and colour which makes it such a captivating fixture on the athletics calendar. That brings to a close the Great Run series for 2014, but join us for our look back at the year in the Great Run Review, and don't forget to keep up to date on our website greatrun.org. For now, it's goodbye from Addis Ababa.